Chicago. That will be from noon to 3. You can go to booktv.org and you'll be able to get the entire schedule of events this weekend live on C-SPAN 2. Thanks for being with us. Here's the House.
The House will be in order. The Chair lays before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., June 2, 2011. I hereby appoint the Honorable Lynn A. Westmoreland to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, John A. Boehner, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Pursuant to the order of the House of January 5, 2011, the Chair will now recognize members from lists submitted by the majority and minority leaders for morning hour debate. The Chair will alternate recognition between the parties, with each party limited to 1 hour, and each member other than the majority and minority leaders and the minority whip limited to 5 minutes each, but in no event shall debate continue beyond 11:50 a.m. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on Tuesday night, the People's House spoke loud and clear. No debt limit increase without real spending cuts to promote job growth. Liberals wanted to increase the debt limit by $2.4 trillion with no meaningful reforms. At a time when the federal government is borrowing 42 cents of every dollar it spends, the last thing Americans want to do is raise the government's borrowing limit, recklessly killing jobs. Liberals in Congress need to attach real cuts to any increases they are seeking. That means for every dollar proposed to increase the debt limit, there should be $1 in cuts. It makes sense. Tuesday night's vote of 318 to 97 to 7 shows that the House is overwhelmingly in agreement with this debt limit increase being denied. Over 80 Democrats joined with the 237 Republicans to vote against the President's debt ceiling request. Adding more debt to our economy handicaps small business job creation and aggravates our country's debt crisis even further. This is a direct risk to senior citizens with the value of the dollar being put at risk. It's a threat to students who could be overwhelmed with overwhelming debt in the future. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we'll never forget September 11th in the global war on terrorism.
Gentleman's time has expired. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Miller, for 5 minutes.
Extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Speaker, members of the House, a little more than a year ago, 29 coal miners lost their lives in the Upper Big Branch mine in West Virginia. Our nation watched with sadness as a small community felt the lash of the worst coal mine tragedy in this country in 4 decades. Shortly after the tragedy, our nation promised these families to get to the bottom of what happened, and we promised to make sure that something like this would never happen again. The good news is that we learned a lot about what caused this tragedy in the last year. Last month, an independent panel of experts appointed by the governor of West Virginia released the results of a 13-month-long investigation. They concluded that the explosion was preventable. The panel said that the warning signs about dangerous conditions in the mine were ignored leading up to the tragedy. They found that the Massey Energy Company ignored basic safety precautions that the mining industry had recognized for more than a century. Repeated violations had become business as usual, something which the investigation called the normalization of deviance, where unsafe behavior and conditions become normal at Upper Big Branch Mine. The report lays out how this tragedy unfolded. It may have ended with a sudden explosion, but it was a slow-motion disaster. The company's inadequate ventilation system allowed explosive gases to build up. Workers were slogging in neck-deep water that obstructed the air currents needed to ventilate methane gas. The mine's owners routinely illegally changed ventilation plans and used faulty engineering. In the months before the explosion, miners asked Massey management 561 times to quench the explosive potential of coal dust by applying rock dust. Yet Massey only took action 65 times, or 11% of the time they were requested to do so. Water sprays on mining machines were not properly maintained and failed to extinguish sparks, which allowed the fire to ignite. Coal dust provided the fuel that allowed a localized fire to trigger a massive explosion that ripped through miles of underground tunnels where miners were working. Finally, the report found intimidation. Miners were afraid to speak out about their safety concerns. They dared not stop coal production. Anyone who challenged management was considered a nuisance or a threat, and their jobs were on the line. These conditions are chilling. This report makes it clear that the failure to effectively deal with reckless operators occurred at many levels. Our nation's health and safety protections failed these 29 miners because of the many loopholes in the law that exploited by the mine industry. Regulators allowed the mine to operate in a badly engineered ventilation system and failed to force operators to use modern technology to prevent coal dust explosions. And the mining industry failed these workers because they repeatedly refused to speak out against some of the worst actors within their industry and have opposed legislation to curtail their misconduct. The state investigation is a call to action. The panel urges Congress to enact reforms to modernize mine safety technology, to give regulators better tools to strengthen criminal provisions, and to improve the rights of miners. Mr. Speaker, this report and its recommendations, and Congress has been warned. We cannot abide by the status quo any longer. We cannot let Washington's pay-to-play politics paralyze legislative action once again. Congress has been warned. We cannot let mine operators game mine safety enforcement by paying lawyers instead of fixing chronic safety problems. And Congress has been warned. We cannot let miners live in fear of being fired for speaking out on behalf of their safety. Their voices save lives. Congress has been warned. We cannot let decisions made in the boardrooms to put production over safety go unchallenged any longer. These are responsible mining companies. There are responsible mining companies that operate without an avalanche of violations. There are operators who do not make deviant behavior part of their corporate culture. We want these mine operators to join us to rework the rules that govern this industry. In the end, though, getting mine reform depends upon Congress. The responsibility rests squarely here. These disasters are preventable. The report is a very clear warning. We must not wait for another tragedy before Congress owns up to its responsibility.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Ohio, Ms. Smith, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I request to extend and revise my...
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, today is a sad day for my district because today we're going to lay an American hero to rest. Private First Class William Seth Blevins. He was only 21. Just before Christmas in 1989, on December 22nd, Stephen and Trish Wagner Blevins got the best gift of all, a beautiful, healthy little boy. They lived in rural America, Sardinia, Brown County, Ohio. They're small business owners, working hard to make a living and working harder to make sure that their children achieve the American dream. And they did their job with Seth. You see, Seth was a wonderful young man, a young man who loved our country so much, he put the cloth of his country, a uniform on, and decided to protect our freedom at no matter what cost or peril it was to him. In 2008, he graduated from Eastern High School in Brown County. He played soccer, basketball, participated in the band, and was a member of the Eastern High School chapter of the National Honor Society. Clearly a winning individual. He attended Ohio University and took courses at the University of Cincinnati prior to enlisting in the Army. He was a member of the Peace Lutheran Church in Arnheim. His parents now feel an unbearable sorrow with the loss of their wonderful son, Seth. But so does his sister, Paige Blevins. his mother's fiancé, Brandon Black, his maternal grandparents, Will and Shirley Wagner, and all of the aunts and uncles and cousins and friends, everyone in the community. Seth was a member of the U.S. Army 2nd Battalion, 27th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Brigade Combat Team, 25th Infantry Division, Schofield Barracks in Hawaii, commonly referred to as the Wolfhounds. And he loved what he did. Unfortunately, on May 23, 2011, while so many Americans were planning their celebrations for Memorial Day, he was the victim of an improvised explosive device in Kunar Province, Afghanistan, participating in the Operation Enduring Freedom. Mr. Speaker, we must never forget the bravery of our men and women in uniform that continue to serve our country and continue to serve it in harm's way. These are true American heroes. So many who have died, so many continue in the battlefield, so many that are injured. But today I ask this chamber and America to recognize Seth Blevins' family and pray for them so that they can endure this heartache and find a way to overcome it. Mr. Speaker, may Seth Blevins rest in peace, and may his family find peace. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Hoyer, for 5 minutes.
Ask unanimous consent to revise and extend.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as you know, I am a very proud alumnus of the University of Maryland. For more than a century and a half, the University of Maryland has represented the best of American ideals of public education. Now I am very proud to say that the University of Maryland tradition is in the capable hands of our new president, Dr. Wallace Lowe, who was inaugurated this spring. Wallace Lowe came to the United States at the age of 15, alone, without family, with $300 in his pocket, his parents' life savings. Wallace Lowe was born in Shanghai, China. His father, a diplomat, fled the communist regime to Lima, Peru, when Wallace was a very young man. He grew up in Lima to the age of 15. But it was here in this country that he pursued the education that would ultimately make him one of our most respected academic leaders. President Lowe comes to College Park from the University of Iowa, where he served as provost and executive vice president. He brings to the University of Maryland more than 3 decades of hard work and accomplishment in higher education. His successful career as a scholar and administrator has taken him to Seattle University, the University of Washington, the University of Colorado at Boulder, Beijing University in China, and more. He also served as a top policy advisor to Governor Gary Locke, who will be our ambassador in China. Gary Locke, of course, was the governor of Washington State. In that capacity, he led the state's effort to expand access to higher education for low- and middle-income students. As a leading scholar in the legal field, Dr. Lowe has also been elected president of the Association of American Law Schools. Wallace Lowe holds a law degree from Yale University, a Ph.D. from the University of Michigan, a master's from Cornell University, and a bachelor's from Grinnell College in Iowa. I believe that the University of Maryland could not have chosen a more qualified leader to take our university into this century. Throughout his diverse career, President Lowe has built a strong track record of creating academic excellence at every stop. What an extraordinary background Wallace Lowe has for this increasingly integrated world, and particularly as it relates to our relations with China, one of the world's largest nations, both in terms of people and its economy. In his inaugural address, President Lowe reflected on Barack Obama's statement that America has reached a Sputnik moment, a moment when our place as a world economic and innovative leader is increasingly challenged. Institutions like the University of Maryland are critical to our continued leadership in the world, As President Lowe said, and I quote, "The American Research University, a growing achievement of American civilization, must respond to this Sputnik moment. We are a premier research university," speaking of the University of Maryland. He went on to say that we must also become a premier innovation and entrepreneurial university. I have no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that the University of Maryland is well equipped to fulfill that role and do its part for our state and our nation. And I have no doubt that Wallace Lowe was exactly the right person to choose to lead the university at this time. I want to wish Dr. Lowe and the university the very best as it works with so many other extraordinary universities and colleges and educational institutions in the United States of America to make sure that we make it in America. That is to say that we out-educate, we out-build, we out-innovate our competitors so that we can provide the kind of quality life, the jobs that our people need, a growing economy for the future, for our children. And I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Jones, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Like most of my colleagues in the House, on Memorial Weekend, Memorial Day, I had the privilege to speak to 2 different groups down in the 3rd District of North Carolina, which I represent. One of the events comes to mind down in Beaufort, North Carolina. There were well over 150 people there. Most of them obviously were veterans or family of veterans, and a couple of families whose loved ones didn't come home from previous wars. That brings me to the point that last week Jim McGovern and I offered an amendment to create a formula to bring our troops home from Afghanistan. And I want to thank the 26 Republicans who voted for that amendment. We came within 6 votes of creating a formula for the President to bring our troops home before 2015. Mr. Speaker, at these 2 events down in my district, I had veterans to line up when I finished to come up to say, we agree with you on your position to bring our troops home from Afghanistan. And even in one event, I got a very strong applause when I mentioned the McGovern-Jones amendment and how close we came to create a formula to bring our troops home. Mr. Speaker, they said to me, well, you know, why did we go into Afghanistan? Bin Laden, he was responsible for 9/11. He's dead now. Al-Qaeda, which had a large presence back in 2003, 2004 in Afghanistan, is now diminished. Now, these are the veterans talking to me. I'm not a veteran. But my statement was, you're right. Our country is financially broke. We spend over $8 billion. We can't pay our bills. And yet Mr. Karzai, who's corrupt to begin with, the leader of Afghanistan, we always seem to find $8 billion a month to send to him. It makes no sense. So Mr. McGovern and I and people on my side and his side, we're going to continue to work to create an atmosphere, an environment to encourage President Obama not to wait until 2015. That's exactly what Secretary Gates said to the Armed Services Committee, which I serve on, in February of this year. In 2015, we will start bringing home our troops. Well then, Mr. Speaker, how many more will have to die, lose their legs and their arms in the next 4 years? It's only 2011, and we're talking about 2015. I can tell you our military has won the war many, many times. And as you can see, this is a paper not even in my district, Greensboro, North Carolina, where Mr. Howard Coble's from. This was an editorial a few weeks ago, and it says, "Get out." And there's a flag-draped coffin transfer case being carried off the plane by soldiers or airmen. So it is time that this Congress come together in a bipartisan way and bring our troops home. I see the families down at Camp Lejeune, which is in my district. I talk to them. I listen to them. They think they have done their job. They think it's time to come home. So, Mr. Speaker, as I do all the time on the floor of the House when I'm closing, I ask God to please bless our men and women in uniform. I ask God to please bless the families of our men and women in uniform. I ask God in His loving arms to hold the families who've given a child dying for freedom in Afghanistan and Iraq. I ask God to please bless the House and Senate that we will do what is right in the eyes of God for His people in this great nation. I'll ask God to give wisdom, strength, and courage to Mr. Obama that he will do what is right in the eyes of God for this great nation. And I will ask 3 times, God please, God please, God please continue to bless America. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Butterfield, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise this morning to pay tribute to a lifelong friend, the Reverend Dr. Dorothy Sharp Johnson, an accomplished pastor, educator, and author who passed from labor to reward on 31 May 2011 after a long illness that did not curtail her work. A native of Wilson County, North Carolina, Dr. Johnson resided in Matthews, North Carolina, which is near the city of Charlotte, with her beloved husband of more than 50 years, retired AME Zion Bishop Joseph Johnson. Mr. Speaker, Dr. Johnson was the 5th of 8 children born to Mark Benjamin and Clara Farmer Sharp. After finishing Spate High School at the age of 15, she went on to earn her bachelor's degree from North Carolina Central University, known at that time as North Carolina College at Durham. Later in life, she earned a master's degree in religious education and a Doctor of Divinity degree from the James Walker Hood Theological Seminary in Salisbury, North Carolina, on the campus of historic Livingstone College. And she received a Doctor of Ministry degree from Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary in Charlotte. Over the years, Dr. Johnson found many ways to serve her community as a public school teacher, school administrator, social worker, and even a seamstress. She was particularly devoted to her faith and church. In 1979, Dr. Johnson was elected by the AME Zion General Conference to oversee the youth mission. During her 8-year tenure, she worked to build a youth retreat that was eventually named in her honor, and today serves as many as 575 youth at a time. Dr. Johnson was a missionary supervisor with the AME Zion Church and was pastor of Indian Hill AME Zion Church in Fort Mill, South Carolina. Her work with the AME Zion Church took her around the world, working in England and Puerto Rico, the Bahamas, and across America as an outreach to her ministry. She published a great number of books that were inspired by her life experience and devotion to God. In addition to all of this, she was a devoted member of the Delta Sigma Theta sorority and the NAACP. Mr. Speaker, one of the most profound statements I can make about this great American is that despite having a medical condition known as systemic lupus erythematosus for more than 40 years, including many surgeries and hospitalizations, she lived a productive life that cannot be surpassed by anyone. She was a good wife, mother, grandmother, sister, aunt, cousin, pastor, and friend. Dr. Johnson distinguished herself in so many ways and made a difference in this world. The Johnsons are the proud parents of 2 adult sons, the Reverend Anthony Johnson, pastor of St. Matthew AME Zion Church of Rock Hill, South Carolina, and Timothy Johnson, a civil engineer in our great state. And they were the grandparents of 2 grandchildren, Angelica and Derek, both of whom are honor students. Dr. Johnson is also survived by 4 sisters, Barbara Jones, Trumilla Jones, Ernestine Wright, and Betty Coley, 3 brothers, Rudolph Sharp, Eugene Sharp, and a very good friend of mine, David Sharp of Phoenix, Arizona. Mr. Speaker, I ask my colleagues to join me in recognizing this great life. We extend condolences to her husband, Bishop Joseph Johnson, their sons, and all of their family and friends. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the time this morning. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Wahlberg, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Tuesday, the House overwhelmingly defeated by a vote of 318 to 97 a blank check on spending. We stopped the unconditional raising of the debt ceiling. The fact remains, we are in a debt crisis because Washington spends too much, not because it taxes too little. America is drowning in debt, and we need to significantly reduce spending and make long-term reforms that encourage private sector job creation and move toward a balanced budget. Raising the debt limit without restoring financial accountability was unacceptable, and that's why I voted against this irresponsible debt limit increase. I can't comprehend why this administration continues to push the same dangerous, failed strategy that got us into this economic mess. The failure to increase in the debt limit on the floor Tuesday would be enough evidence for the White House and Washington Democrats to conclude that Americans want Washington to stop signing a blank check, spending money we don't have, and sending the bill to our children and our grandchildren, grandchildren that I personally have an opportunity every time I open my BlackBerry to see their faces and be reminded that it's for them that I speak. And this House spoke on Tuesday evening. Yet more than 100 House Democrats signed onto a letter publicly advocating for a debt limit increase without spending cuts and reforms. And unfortunately, after meeting with the President yesterday, I'm not sure he's heard the people on this issue either. According to the latest evidence, only 11% of Americans support a blank check raising of the debt limit and more spending. This vote demonstrates that President Obama and the House Democrats are far out of step with the rest of America and should join House Republicans in working to cut spending. The American people have said no to the Democrats, and they're not going to take it anymore, not another blank check of more spending and more debt for the Obama administration. It's the time now to think of the next generation and not the next election, and take time to rip up a blank check of defeat for our country. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Woolsey, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, we've learned a lot over the last several days about the Republicans' commitment to both national security and fiscal responsibility. Last week, after the party of limited government spending passed the $690 billion defense authorization bill loaded with Pentagon pork, they jammed through a 4-year extension of key provisions of the USA Patriot Act. With a last-minute rush vote with virtually no debate, the party of small government authorized more wiretapping and more poking through Americans' personal records. And now today, our ongoing debate over fiscal year 2012 Homeland Security appropriations shows us that the majority's penny-wise, pound-foolish approach is in all of its glory. This bill breaks faith with first responders, underfunding key firefighter assistance grants and state Homeland Security grants that primarily train and equip first responders. Important programs will be rolled into a block grant so that localities will be competing for dwindling federal Homeland Security grants. This and more undermining our community's ability to deal with all kinds of hazards, including potential nuclear, chemical, and biological attacks. The bill cuts Homeland Security research and development programs by 40%, Mr. Speaker. So while terrorist organizations are busily mastering technologies, we'll be eliminating very important research projects in biological and explosive detections and advanced cybersecurity. Shame on us. Homeland Security already took a hit in fiscal year 2011. The majority, which claims to care about nothing more than the safety and security of the American people, wants to cut more than $1 billion from last year's funding levels and provides $2 billion less than what the President has proposed. Meantime, while we're nickel and diming our first responders, we're throwing $10 billion every month, $10 billion every month at a war in Afghanistan that is killing Americans while doing very little, if anything, to advance our national security. Where are the budget cutters when it comes to appropriating that money? Where are all the hard questions and the tough scrutiny when it comes to funding a decade-long military occupation of Afghanistan that has failed in every conceivable way? $10 billion a month on Afghanistan for the price of about 6 days of fighting the war in Afghanistan. We could make up the difference between the President's Homeland Security request and the allocation in this bill. 6 days. The majority clearly has one set of standards for important domestic programs and another, quite another, for military adventures abroad. If you want to wage a war, no questions asked. But if you want to support first responders or educate small children or preserve Medicare, you better duck, because the Budget Act is aimed at the people's priorities. I remind my friends in the majority that terrorists would strike us here, on our shores, in our homeland, in our capital. An enormous military footprint that's stomping down in a sovereign country thousands of miles away, a country where Osama bin Laden wasn't hiding and al-Qaeda is barely active, is not where we need to be putting our efforts. Let's do the smart thing. Let's fully fund Homeland Security, and let's save money and lives by bringing our troops home. I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Thompson, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, the United States House sent a clear message to the White House that it's time to address our nation's growing debt crisis and get serious with real budgetary reforms so that America can meet its budget and credit obligations at home and around the world. There's good reason why the dollar is still the world's gold standard when it comes to credit ratings, and that the U.S. is seen as a wise investment around the world. A first-rate credit rating, which the United States currently has, means there is nothing for lenders to worry about. It lets investors know how likely a borrower can pay back a loan and that they will receive a good return on their investment. And that's why I can't emphasize enough the importance of our nation's credit rating. A downgraded credit rating will erode confidence in our economy and certainly reduce certainty for businesses and investors at home and abroad. We must work to ensure that this never happens by reforming spending and fixing our debt problem. Make it so that there is not one doubt when it comes to the creditworthiness of the United States. In April, Standard & Poor's lowered the outlook for the United States credit to negative. S&P's rationale: the U.S. has a large debt and deficit compared with other highly rated nations, and unlike with those other nations, quote, the path to addressing the debt and the deficit is not clear to us. To be clear, this warning from the S&P was not over the debt limit debate, but because Washington has no plan to tackle its massive debt. Since 1975, there has been at least 9 examples when clean debt limit bills have failed to pass in either the House or Senate. And remember, in 2006, then U.S. Senator Obama voted against a clean increase of $78.1 billion. And in each case, day, weeks, or months later, a debt limit was ultimately enacted. So again, it's not about the debate. We've seen this discussion many times over the last several decades. But it is about world markets losing confidence in our ability to implement those needed reforms and address our growing $14 trillion debt. Over the past 2 years, we've seen the largest budget deficits in the history of the United States. This, along with our structural deficits due to insolvent entitlement programs and the rising cost of health care, is the reason we face serious issues regarding the confidence in our ability to make good on our commitments. In April, the United States kept its AAA rating. Unfortunately, as S&P warned, if we fail to act on these reforms, this could happen. Raising the debt ceiling without significant structural spending reforms would send a signal to the world that America lacks the political will to restore fiscal sanity and meet our obligations. Unfortunately, many of my Democratic colleagues have continued to ask for a clean up or down vote on raising the debt limit. including, most recently, more than 100 Democrats signed a letter to the House leadership requesting an up or down vote on the issue. Earlier this week, that request was granted, and the legislation's failure demonstrates that any plan to raise the debt limit without dramatic steps to reduce spending and reform the budget process is unacceptable to the American people. With any hope, we send a clear message that it's time to stop with the political pandering and get serious about bringing about real budgetary reforms. It's unfortunate, however, Mr. Speaker, the problem has been identified. While tough decisions must be made, the solution is in our reach. What we lack is the political will to lead and take action. Mr. Speaker, if we don't act boldly now, the markets will act for us very soon. The world is watching, and we can no longer afford to kick this can down the road. Our nation's debt crisis offers us the political will to act, for the greatest threat to our economy and our children's future is doing nothing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from California, Mrs. Robel Allard, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, for 5 months this Congress has debated how best to address the looming crises of our national deficit. While the debate has often been partisan and polarized, one thing Democrats and Republicans agree on is that addressing our national health care expenditures is a critical part of the solution. A major component of the escalating health care costs in this country is maternity care. The cost of maternity care for mother and child in the U.S. is more than double that of any country in the world. But despite the exorbitant amount of money we spend on maternity care, the U.S. ranks far behind nearly all developed countries in maternal and infant outcomes. Sadly, childbirth continues to have significant risks for mothers and babies, especially in communities of color. Many factors contribute to these poor outcomes and high costs. The most disturbing by far is the fact that there is a vast body of knowledge regarding best evidence-based maternity care, yet current U.S. practice does not follow that research. This results in the widespread overuse of maternity procedures, including cesarean sections and scheduled inductions, which credible evidence tells us are beneficial only in limited situations. Unfortunately, the overuse of these practices results in longer maternity hospital stays and multiple costly procedures that contribute to making combined mother and infant childbirth charges our most costly hospital and Medicaid expenditures. To address these poor outcomes and high costs, today I am introducing the Maximum Optimal Maternity Services for the 21st Century Act. The Moms for the 21st Century Act will create a national focus on optimal maternity care by establishing an interagency coordinating committee to ensure federal agencies are promoting the best evidence-based maternity practices in their programs. The bill also authorizes an extensive media campaign to educate consumers on how to achieve the healthiest maternity outcomes, including the importance of maternity practices such as smoking cessation programs in pregnancy and group model prenatal care. These and other non-invasive practices have been shown to produce considerable improvement in outcomes with no detrimental side effects, but regrettably, they are significantly underused in this country. Furthermore, the bill will expand research on best maternity practices and will direct collection of data on maternity shortage areas. It will also facilitate the development of more interdisciplinary maternity care workforce by bringing together maternity care providers to develop core curricula across maternity professional disciplines, and it establishes a loan repayment program for maternity care providers who commit to work in underserved areas. Finally, the Moms for the 21st Century Act will support the education of a more culturally and linguistically diverse workforce by authorizing grant programs for maternity professional organizations to recruit and retain minority providers. Mr. Speaker, we can and we must do better for mothers and newborns. As a country, we must reach beyond our self-imposed boundaries to embrace and prioritize an evidence-based model of maternity care that will save lives and save money. I urge my colleagues to join me in this effort by co-sponsoring and helping to pass the Moms for the 21st Century Act. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Westmoreland, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I come to the floor this morning with sadness, but with great pride, to honor one of Georgia's proud sons who gave his life, the ultimate sacrifice, on March the 29th in Konar Province, Afghanistan, in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. Private Jeremy Faulkner was a man known for having a huge heart and always sticking up for the underdog. Jeremy grew up in Stockbridge, Georgia, and joined the Army after attending Griffin High School. This is a time in life when many young men struggle with their future, but Private Faulkner answered the call and chose a life of service in the United States Army to make a difference in the world and to keep our nation safe. He gave up his red Dodge Ram for a new kind of vehicle with the U.S. Army 101st Airborne and learned a whole new meaning of the word mudding at basic training. Private Faulkner had already earned a combat ribbon, was an expert marksman, and had discussed with his mother Judy the possibility of making a career out of military service. Private Faulkner was in his 11th month of deployment and days away from promotion to Private First Class when his unit was ambushed, just a few short weeks before his anticipated return home. He'd expressed a desire to join the Wings in the Wind Christian ministry upon his return as a way to share his testament from the seat of a motorcycle. And perhaps a prophetic private call to his stepfather, Private Faulkner, mentioned to his stepfather, Tony Berry, requesting that if anything should happen to him, that the Wings in the Wind and the Patriot Guard riders would be present at his procession. No one expected just how soon that procession would be needed. Through 3 counties, crowds of strangers lined the streets escorting Private Faulkner home as a testament to the community support of Jeremy and his family. As Jeremy requested, the Wings of the Wind and the Patriot Guard riders roared to accompany dozens of police and fire department vehicles in an inspiring procession fit for such a young hero. As former Rhodes Scholar Elmer Davis put it so simply, the nation will remain the land of the free only so long as it is the home of the brave. Our nation owes Private Jeremy Faulkner a debt of gratitude for his bravery, and I am proud to stand here and thank him for sacrificing his life for strangers like me and my family, as well as the rest of the United States of America. So to Jeremy's family, and especially to Jeremy, thank you. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Ellison, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to stand shoulder to shoulder with the legitimate aims of Syrian people in their quest for freedom and democracy. Ever since the Syrian people rose up to demand their rights and dignity from the Assad regime, they have faced brutal repression. Their nonviolent protest movement has been met with repressive force, and this has been a disgrace on the world scene. The human rights abuses of the Assad regime are unthinkable, and they're historic and generational. It is torturing its own people at this time, including even children. I was shocked and outraged by the story of Hamza el-Khatib. He's a 13-year-old boy who was killed and tortured, and his body was returned to his family on May 25th with clear signs of torture and brutality. He had a broken hand, his genitals were cut off and severed, and he, this young man, only 13 years old, will never really see will never see his family again because he's gone on. But what happened to him, the Syrian people can't forget, and his example has inspired people to stand up for democracy. Over the past 3 months, a familiar pattern has emerged. People organize public demonstrations to demand their God-given rights. Inevitably, the government forces overreaction and kills peaceful protesters. Funerals for the deceased garner even larger demonstrations, which are then repressed ever more brutally by the government. The emergency situation in Syria today has reached a new level. When tanks rolled into Daraa since that time, hundreds of peaceful demonstrators have been killed. Just this morning, this very morning, Syrian forces killed 15 people when they shelled a town of Rastan. 58 have been killed there in the past 3 days alone. Over 1,000 have been killed since democracy protests began. Mr. Speaker, it's truly unfortunate that the Assad regime missed the historic opportunity that it had right before it to set a new pattern in the Arab Spring, a pattern that above all respects human rights. Instead, it chose to become an enemy of its own people. By murdering its own people and violating their fundamental right to security and liberty, the Assad regime has lost any and all legitimacy to govern. Legitimacy is gained through consent of the governed, not brutal repressive crackdowns, jailings, and torturing. While we don't yet know how events will ultimately unfold in Syria, I want to commend the activism of Syrian Americans. Syrian Americans are doing everything they can to support their friends and their family. For example, just last week, the Syrian American Council organized a day of action to support freedom and democracy in Syria. Some 400+ Syrian Americans came all across the country to come to Washington, D.C., to lobby their representatives in Congress, to demonstrate at the Syrian embassy, and to organize committees to plan future initiatives. That's how democracy works, Mr. Speaker. People coming together with a common concerns to peaceably petition their government. That's what makes America great, and that's what sets us apart from places like Syria under the Assad regime. Syria could be a great bastion of liberty, but not with this illegitimate regime. I stand with the patriotic Americans who, with steadfast opposition of this grotesque human rights abuses of the Assad regime, and once and for all, call on it to respect the right, dignity, and democratic aspirations of its people. The world will not forget Hamza al-Khatib, Mr. Speaker. We won't forget the legitimate yearnings for liberty and justice from the people of Syria or anywhere in the world. Thank you. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Duncan, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I request permission to address the House and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, the Congressional Quarterly today has a headline that says, "Some House Republicans showing signs of war fatigue." Unfortunately, this headline comes just the day after the Appropriations Defense Subcommittee has approved another $119 billion for our overseas wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya, $10 billion a month, $2.3 billion each week. By the most conservative estimates, we have now spent over $2 trillion in direct and indirect costs in Iraq and Afghanistan. Most of this money has gone into nation building rather than stopping or defending against any real threat. We have turned the Department of Defense into the Department of Foreign Aid, and the American people are tired of it. They want us to stop rebuilding Iraq and Afghanistan and start taking care of our own people. We are spending billions and billions that we do not have, that we are having to borrow, on people who do not appreciate it unless they are on our payroll. Alfred Regnery, publisher of the conservative American Spectator magazine, wrote last October that, quote, Afghanistan has little strategic value and, quote, the war is one of choice rather than necessity. He added that it has been, quote, a wasteful and frustrating decade. The American people do not want, nor can we afford endless permanent wars, nor do they want 11 or 12-year wars that last about 3 times as long as World War II. You can never satisfy government's appetite for money or land. They always want more. Every gigantic bureaucracy always wants to expand its mission so it can get more funding. Every government agency always exaggerates the threats or problems it is confronting so it can get more money. The Pentagon is a gigantic bureaucracy that will do everything within its tremendous power to keep getting more and more money from the taxpayers. But there have to be limits somewhere, and fiscal conservatives should be the ones most horrified by all the hundreds of billions we have poured and continue to pour down these Iraqi, Afghan, and Libyan rat holes. The American people and conservative Republicans all over this country are saying enough is enough. They want us to stop rebuilding Iraq and Afghanistan and paying for a useless war in Libya and start rebuilding the United States of America. We are almost $14 trillion in debt and headed much, much higher very, very soon. Soon we will be printing so much money that our Social Security and other pensions will be worth very little. We have got to get our fiscal house in order. We have got to stop spending hundreds of billions all over the world and start taking care of our own people. Georgianne Geyer, the conservative foreign policy columnist, wrote a few months after the Iraqi war started, many years ago, that, quote, Americans will inevitably come to a point where they have to choose between a government that provides services at home or one that seeks empire across the globe. Mr. Speaker, the American people reached that point a long time ago. Hopefully the Congress will soon follow their lead. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes a gentlewoman from Ohio, Ms. Gapter, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2008, gas prices that rose above $4 a gallon triggered the Wall Street meltdown and housing crisis that continue to plague our country. We're in the same boat today again with gas prices going over $4 a gallon, so be prepared. I rise today to talk about that housing crisis that is devaluing our housing stock across our country, destroying neighborhoods and communities across the nation. Last week, the New York Times ran a piece I wish to place in the record highlighting one more twist in this crisis. According to their front-page expose, the big banks and mortgage companies have profited even more from the foreclosure crisis by amassing giant real estate empires that span across our country. So not only do 6 banks now control 2/3 of the banking system of this country, they've also become real estate magnates too. When is too much too much? The impact on communities has been devastating. The numbers are simply shocking. In my community alone, over 6,700 homes, more homes, are in some type of foreclosure filings. While thousands of America's families are being thrown out onto the street, the big Wall Street banks have nearly doubled the number of houses they've taken through foreclosure since the crisis began 5 years ago. That represents nearly 900,000 homes. That's 900,000 more families whose American dream ended in foreclosure. Sadly, this doesn't include those who are barely hanging on. Approximately 1 in 4 mortgaged homes are still underwater, where families owe more than the home is worth. After taking billions of dollars from our taxpayers, we might expect that the Wall Street banks would want to help people stay in their homes and help more vacant properties be taken off the market. Well, that's not what I'm hearing from local realtors. I spoke with a group of them over a week ago. They keep running up against a brick wall anytime they even try to do a workout with one of these banks. They continue to have difficulty accessing credit for qualified willing buyers. More and more I hear how it's only our local banks and credit unions that are making any effort to make this troubled market function. Wall Street walked away with billions in bailout money and then walked away from the housing mess they created, but they want even more. All the while they are sitting on top of huge profits and taking enormous tax breaks. The 6 largest banks in the country, including Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and J.P. Morgan Chase, together paid an approximate tax rate of only 11% of their pre-tax U.S. earnings in 2009 and 2010, less than half of what other businesses pay. I wish someone in this place could explain why this is allowed to go on. We need to understand that this foreclosure crisis is far from over. In the first quarter of this year alone, approximately 215,000 more properties were in foreclosure across our country, and another 700,000 properties were either in foreclosure filings, received a default notice, bank repossession, or scheduled auction. As these banks continue to agglomerate these properties that are becoming vacant, neighborhoods across our country are being devalued and continue to disintegrate. Every member here knows what I'm talking about. There are some signs that our economy is slowly improving, but boy, we aren't out of the woods yet. Moody's is predicting that housing prices across our nation will continue to fall by as much as 5% by this year's end. I should say 5% more. We cannot sit on our hands and hope the situation gets better. Revival of the housing sector and the jobs it creates has always played a crucial and leading role in any economic recovery. We need to work to help struggling families stay in their homes, protect neighborhoods from being riddled with vacant structures, and get our economy moving again by arresting the continuing decline in our vital housing assets built up over decades coast to coast. Importantly, revitalizing and reoccupying the troubled housing stock would put millions of Americans to work. And isn't it over time to do exactly that? Mr. Speaker, I yield back my remaining time.
The gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes a gentleman from Texas, Mr. Canseco, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, tomorrow, the Department of Labor will release the monthly jobs report for May. While I am hoping to be surprised and that we get news that massive job creation got underway in May, I'm not going to get my hopes up. I'm not getting my hopes up because economic growth is being restrained. It is being restrained because there's still too much uncertainty in the economy, and greater uncertainty in the economy means less job creation in the economy. Uncertainty exists because of the threat posed to job creators by the taxes, the mandates, and the government takeover of private industry. Uncertainty exists because of the 24-month spending binge of President Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and Harry Reid. Job creators see the future tax increases that will be needed if we continue spending money we don't have to the tune of approximately 40 cents out of every dollar. Uncertainty exists because the Obama administration's decision that restricts exploration for and the production of American energy both on land and from deep water sources. That's why the House of Representatives has spent the first 5 months of the 112th Congress passing legislation to rid the economy of this uncertainty and create private sector jobs. The House has passed legislation to repeal the government takeover of health care. It has passed a budget resolution that puts our nation on a fiscally sustainable path while saving and strengthening important programs like Medicare and Social Security for future generations, which, if they are left alone, they are left unreformed, they will go bankrupt. And the House has passed several pieces of legislation aimed at overturning the Obama administration's actions that block production of American energy. Mr. Speaker, we've tried it President Obama's way, attempting to spend and regulate our way to economic prosperity. And what have the American people gotten in return? Of $14.2 trillion and 26 straight months of unemployment at 8% or higher. The American people know you cannot purchase prosperity. You must create it. That's what the people of Texas sent me here to do, to get our economy back on track. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Stivers, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise today to discuss some of the major challenges that face our nation. We face a spending crisis, a debt crisis, a jobs crisis, and in order to solve those, the best thing we can do is focus on jobs, because creating jobs will empower families, it'll increase our economic power, and it will improve our government budget situation. From my many travels around my district in Ohio, from Franklin County to Madison County to Union County, it's become clear that both individuals and businesses need more certainty when it comes to health care costs, energy costs, taxes, and regulation. I visited Stanley Electric in London, Ohio, where they'd like to expand. They have temporary workers they'd like to make permanent full-time workers, but government regulations out of Washington are preventing them from doing that. I held a jobs roundtable in Hilliard with small businesses, and from those small businesses, I heard that we need Congress to get out of the way of job creators. We need to bring more certainty to the banking system so that they'll start lending to small businesses. You know, capital and credit need to be available if small businesses are going to create jobs. They ask us to change the culture in Washington so that people here understand that government does not create jobs. Small business owners and entrepreneurs create jobs. We need to allow those local employers to focus their resources on hiring and to growing their businesses. You know, if we allow them, business can and will create jobs. We just need to give them the right incentives, and innovation will be there, and business owners need the flexibility to invest back in their businesses, and then they need the ability to keep more of what they've earned if they do well. I held a jobs forum in my district at the Ohio State University's Fisher College of Business to discuss with Central Ohio job creators what they need to invest and create jobs. A number of good ideas came out of that forum. Dwight Smith, who is with Sophisticated Systems in Columbus, Ohio, said that Ohio and the nation need to do a better job of putting together job training with unemployment. He said whole categories of jobs are being eliminated in this economy, and we need to make sure that the people that are out there are looking for jobs that are here today and going to be here tomorrow. I think that's a great idea. We need to focus on training and preparing our workforce for jobs that are here today and here tomorrow. We need to tie our workforce development dollars together with our unemployment program so they work together well. Kathy Ivan, who's the owner of Fabric Farms, a small business owner in my district, was very concerned about the onerous small business regulation of the 1099 provisions that were in the health care bill. I'm glad to say that that particular portion of the health care bill has been repealed, but we have to take further steps to make sure business owners have certainty with regard to health care costs and energy costs so that they'll be willing to hire new employees. John Ness of ODW Logistics shared that government has stepped on the hands and needs to stay out of the way of small business owners. We need to remove obstacles of these business owners, and the United States government needs to make tax rates competitive with the rest of the world. John Ness is in a global business, and America's tax rates are making him less competitive. Dr. Michael Camp, who's with the OSU Center for Entrepreneurship, spoke about the importance of accelerator projects and how collaboration with Ohio's third frontier can yield positive results. You know, I think we've got a lot of work to do, but if we can stay focused on getting government out of the way and giving businesses more certainty, you'll see businesses creating a lot of jobs. Those are just a few of the great ideas that were shared at my jobs forum, and I'll continue to work on those ideas and other ideas and reach out so that we can grow our economy, because the best way to solve our problems is through creating jobs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes a gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Paulson, for 5 minutes.